Good evening. I, Aditi Jain, on behalf of Team Legal Maxim, welcomes you to the 6th edition of the Logically Speaking series. It is my honor to have with us Mr. Ankit Chaparia, who is a graduate of Jindal Global Law School. Mr. Ankit is an associate at Aqualaw and specializes in data privacy, real estate, corporate, commercial, IPR, and infrastructure laws. He has advised both international and Indian clients in various sectors. Today, Mr. Ankit will share his insights on the implication of the new IT rules on the WhatsApp privacy policy and the merit of WhatsApp claim. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Aditi, for that kind introduction.
Okay, sir. So starting with the questions. The first question, the Indian government argues that the right to privacy is not an absolute right and has its own restrictions. While previously national security has been a major reason why this right has not been considered absolute. However, according to Rule 4.2 of the IT rules, there is the intermediary rules. The government can ask a social media intermediary to trace the details of the originator of the message on an account of sovereignty, integrity, as well as security of India. What are your views regarding the right to privacy being extended to such a vast area of sovereignty and integrity of India?
So I think primarily your question is as to what is the right of privacy in a sense of what are the boundaries of right to privacy and whether it is an unfettered right or can it be, deviated from in certain instances. And your understanding is that it can be deviated from in the instance of national security, but in not other circumstances. For example, say integrity or otherwise, which has been introduced by the intermediary and digital media and ethics. That's right. Yeah. So let's go back to the basics of privacy. As to, for an example, back, few years back, Justice K.S. Puttaswamy and others, they went to the Supreme Court and they said, at that time, the Aadhaar scheme launched by the government at that point in time, they argued that it's against the right to privacy. So Supreme Court said, okay, hold on, it's fine that you have to decide on whether it, violates the right to privacy or not. But, let us just pause for a second and understand whether privacy at all is a fundamental right in India or not. Therefore, what happened is from that judgment that they referred this question to a larger bench because there were, contrasting opinion on whether privacy is a fundamental right or not. So, Justice S.K. Kaul, Justice Chandrachud and other justices as well, they talk, very in detail about whether privacy is a fundamental right or not. And they actually said that, of course, privacy is a fundamental right now in India. And they went on to state that informational privacy, in a sense, that an ability to control dissemination of information about oneself is also a facet of privacy in India. So when we talk about, traceability requirements or data protection requirement or other things, it falls under the broad heading of informational privacy, which again, come under the heading of privacy. Now, what is informational privacy? So basically, informational privacy, as the court actually put it, they say that it's an ability, of course, to control or control dissemination of information about oneself, and it is intrinsically linked to dignity, self-respect, and personhood of oneself. So if we put this in perspective, they actually, it actually talks about what it comprises. But of course, let us not go into that kind of details. Then the second question the court comes to is whether at all right to informational privacy or privacy in general can be deviated to in certain circumstances. So the court specifically put out that these are not absolute right. So right to privacy is not an absolute right. There can be certain countervailing interest for, which may justify intrusions in privacy. For an example, we have already seen an example, which was the Aadhaar Act. So it was one of the countervailing legitimate interests the government saw, the court saw, that was fine with intrusion of privacy, but of course with their own modification. However, so one part of the question is clear that it is not an unfettered right. It's not an absolute right in that sense. It can be deviated to. Now the question is, in what circumstances can it be deviated from? So the court actually laid down a robust test in this regard, or reiterated that test, to that extent. They said you have to check few things. One, it has to be sanctioned by law. For any measure to deviate from fundamental right to privacy, it has to be sanctioned by law. That's one. Second is it has to have a legitimate state aim. You have to do it for a specific purpose, which is legitimate, of course. And the third is doctrine of proportionality. even, when we look at doctrine of proportionality, it has further prongs. There are 4 prongs to doctrine of proportionality. It says, that it has to have, it should further the aim of what you're going to do. There is no less intrusive measure which is available, and the balancing test, of course, that it should not adversely affect the beneficiary of this or the right holder. It should not adversely affect the right holder. So therefore, the government can actually deviate from informational privacy or privacy in general, but it has to be balanced with this specific test, and it has to be looked into as to how that test is applied in practical scenarios or hypotheticals or otherwise.
Right, sir. So, do you think that the rules that have been issued, they are taking into consideration all these factors while they state that the sovereignty and integrity of India plays a due role?
So if I may just explain myself again. So the countervailing interest, the competing values that we're talking about against the privacy, it can be integrity, it can be national security, or it can be other thing as well. However, it is extremely important to understand as to what is the application of it. For example, in what manner you're deviating from it. So what is it that you're planning to achieve, and how do you implement it in real life? That's also an extremely important or crucial component of it.
Right, so I think so that clears my second question also and gives clarity. That was about the abuse of the discretion on the part of the government, because the government will have to use all of these factors to be able to come to a conclusion as to how these will be applied and will be applicable. So my question was what do you think that in practical situations, like for example in WhatsApp case, how will this factor play into consideration, and how will the government, do you think, will exercise its right? To what stance it can exercise its right? Because WhatsApp has been questioning the specific rule of right to privacy, that even though it is not an absolute right, but the boundaries that have been laid are very far-fetched in that sense.
Right. So if I understand the question right, you're trying to now say as to how can the government, what is the extent of abuse of this specific rule by the government in real sense. So, before coming to that, let us understand what happens in case of non-compliance. So for an example, say WhatsApp's, say that we are not going to follow this. Then what happens? So in basic sense, we understand that intermediaries are just passive conduit of information, which means they electronically stores, disseminates information that, which they do not themselves produce. To say that they specifically enjoy a safe harbor provision, that they will not be liable for any kind of content. That is, for example, when we are having this meeting right here, right now, and if I say something slanderous or something wrong, Zoom per se, the portal that we are conducting this meeting on, the virtual meeting on, will not be held liable for the content that we generate here right now, because this specific portal do not produce it, or they do not generate this content. So this was a specific safe harbor provision which is actually recognized in Section 79 of the Information Technology Act as well. However, there are a few conditions to it. For an example, any intermediary, to enjoy this specific safe harbor provision, they have to abide by certain requirements, due diligence requirements, and now of course the intermediary guidelines that are just passed right now. Therefore, Rule 4.2 that you're talking about is specifically a component of it. That if say if the intermediary do not comply with that specific rule, they will lose their safe harbor status, to say so. But safe harbor status is an extremely essential component for for polymorphism and malleability of internet in general, because otherwise internet service providers are a critical component in the way we enjoy and in the way we use internet in today's age. And I'll just like to point out that this specific rule just do not give the government the discretion to call for traceability of the message. Of course, that specific concept that will come to later if we have time. Also gives the government the discretion to use this specific ask for this specific requirement also in the other cases, not just integrity and national security, but say in cases of crimes also, for where the punishment is laid down for more than 5 years, and other things also. The discretion that the government has is huge, like for huge range of matters that they can ask for this traceability requirement to be called in. So the discretion is very vast, but of course it remains to be seen as to how it is applied in the practical life, because otherwise the window for abuse is very large. But of course it may be an essential countervailing interest as well, but that has to be argued out in the court, and we'll see as to how that develops.
That was actually what I wanted to get a sense of, because I wasn't able to understand when I was also reading about the WhatsApp claim that this power given looks very wide. So how does the abuse needs to be checked into? And like you pointed out that we'll talk about the traceability bit. My third question was about the traceability bit, because WhatsApp questions the present IT rules on the part of the traceability.
Right. So the traceability requirements. So for example, the rule states that the social media intermediary will have to turn the original creator of the content in any of these specific instances that we're talking about. In the case there is a specific instance of national security, integrity, etc., the social media intermediary has to turn the original creator of that content. What does that mean? So for an example, say an X in say Jharkhand or say other state created a content, say for an example in the form of a picture that is a hate message. They forward it to a specific group, or they emails me that specific picture. I download that specific picture and I send it to my friend on WhatsApp to ask, what is this? It's just, I want to inquire about it. But in this case, I become the creator of that content because I am originally sharing that message. So it's not always the case that there is only going to be one person who's going to be the original creator of that content. So I'm sure you must have seen that when you forward a specific image on WhatsApp, it says forwarded. Right. So, and there are a lot of other cases when you actually go in your gallery and share that picture, or you download it from somewhere, that forwarded sign is not there. So in these cases, you and I also become the creator of original content. And if they turn in the names or list of so many people over to the government agencies, you understand as to what kind of repercussions it may actually have. And I'm saying this from a statement that WhatsApp released. I cannot give my 2 cents on how the technology works or how it can be defined, but I'm telling you this from the official statement of WhatsApp in response to the claims of the government of India. So they say to enable this feature on WhatsApp, what they will essentially have to do is, even if the government makes this kind of request or not, is a question that has to be addressed in future, because we'll see how that plays out. However, to be able to design this on their platform, on the portal, they will have to inevitably store personal information, including all chats and everything of all users on their server, which means that they will be time stamping everything. It is almost like a mass surveillance campaign that the WhatsApp might be induced to undertake to be able to comply with this specific rule. So now I think you can clearly see that when this happens, you understand, we have all kinds of contents on WhatsApp. I mean, we have laid ourselves bare out there in the technological world, and you know how it functions. So you understand the amount of pervasiveness it has in our safe space, to call it, with the idea of encryption. This is one specific right, which is the right of privacy that WhatsApp is talking about, that when you do it, it actually takes away that. And the second, if you look at the juxtaposition of it, we see that there are certain countervailing interests, which is right absolutely standing against it, which is the national security, or to actually the prevention or detection of a certain crime. In a lot of circumstances, you would see that if you are able to access WhatsApp chats or other chats of a specific individual or a specific kind of a message as to where it originated from, you might be able to solve that case. So how do you balance this out? That is the entire ordeal about.
I never thought of the understanding of originator that I had was very different. Like, I always thought that, okay, if I'm forwarding a message, like I'm forwarding hate speech message, there might be some originator, but it didn't click my mind that it can also be because I download some picture and I send it,
Right.
and it was sent to me by someone else and I didn't intend to. Then how
Right.
this intention needs to be proven, and it will be very difficult to be proven in court as well.
Right. Because if you look at the rules, they just do not. So I'll just give certain defenses for the government of India as well now. So they do not kind of say that give us the details of the chats. They just say that you just tell me who was it. Then we'll look into it. And they also vaguely mention that if there are less inclusive measure to go about it, they will not use this discretion. But that's not defined. The contours of it is not defined. Of course, they also say that they will only be forced to comply with this specific direction if it is through a court order or an appropriate governmental order. These certain here and there safeguards are there, but I'm not sure if it is comprehensive and robust enough to kind of safeguard us from the larger harm that we see in this.
I totally agree, because even if a court orders to take my phone, and I will be liable to give them my phone because the court ordered to do so, and I might have my personal information and everything.
So in this circumstance, the court would order WhatsApp to give the government the name of the original content creator. And then, the proceedings might happen. Police may ask for it, but the court, I'm not sure if they'll, ask it in that black and white sense as to they'll ask you directly for your phone or something like that.
Okay, I thought that ask WhatsApp from the name, then the court can further ask for,
By a court order, WhatsApp can be directed to turn in the names.
Okay, got it.
Or,
I thought it the other way around.
Right. Or, or if, say, for example, government authorizes certain officials that, not below the rank of X, if this person gives a written order, WhatsApp will have to do it. So there are two ways to go about it.
Okay.
But I think, the judicial way is more sound, if at all, we, agree to do it, because then we have proper reasonableness of that specific order as to why we actually implemented it in the first place.
Right.
But now the question is not as to when are we going to use it or how do we use it, but the question is that if we use it at all or not, because the conscious decision of mandating it to happen is itself has a heavy price to pay, which is in terms of privacy. So for them to have this design ready will itself will force them to take away the encryption that they embed right now in their portal. So that decision has to be made at two levels. One, whether we do it or not do it, because it already has a major impact on your privacy first. Second, if we plan to do it, then how do we do it as to we can cause least damage or least harm to the user? So that specific, these two specific decisions have to be taken.
Sir, this brings to me a next question. This last discussion only brought me to think about the fact that even though WhatsApp conversations are encrypted, they do store some data, and we have the provision of backup.
Huge amounts of data, not just some data.
Yes, like they have huge amount of data being stored, and we have backups for this particular reason. Don't you think this is problematic? Because we have allowed, because in order to access anything, for example, if I have to use the WhatsApp feature, I will have to allow my photos, microphone, everything. So I will have to give them access to it. So in other ways, it's just that I'm extending the access being given. First, it was limited only to the WhatsApp. Now it's being extended to the government of India. So how do you think the WhatsApp will be able to argue this thing, that because they themselves store a lot of data, because they don't sign a contract with us that we are not liable to share this data with you, and there can be leakage of data, and there have been in the past where data has been leaked in various cases. So how do you think this whole scenario will come into picture?
That's a very intriguing question. And it actually brings me to an intriguing question, which was posed by Homo Deus in his book, A Brief History of Tomorrow. So he, lays out this question in the most, brilliant manner that there can be. It states, what happens to life, society, and politics if non-conscious but highly intelligent algorithms know us better than we know ourselves? All right, so this is not the exact quote, but this is what somewhat it states. So this is a specific question that we are coming to. You might have also seen that now Facebook acquired WhatsApp sometimes back. They also acquired Instagram for that matter. So this data sharing arrangement, when you look at it, it's not just restricted to WhatsApp, and Facebook chats are not encrypted as far as I know. So they create they profile a certain individual with all these platforms, and which they share intersay in a manner that we're out there. They know us better than we know ourselves. So this is a highly problematic one. However, when I quoted this specific thing, I quoted it for a specific reason. So it says what happens to life, politics, and society. So when I give a real life example, I'm sure sometimes in your life, I don't intend to be personal, but you must have thought that I want to buy a pair of white shoes next week, or say for an example, I want to buy this specific bag next week, and you immediately see that pictures of the best sneakers in the world will pop up on your Facebook page. Or for example, even the trip that you've been planning for, best resorts, even though the algorithm do not know that we are broke, that's a separate question altogether. But you see, all kinds of these ads pop up. Even though the usage of these apps are free, but they come at a price, and that price is privacy. So this is an example of how it affects, life or everyday circumstances in general. Just a caveat or a rider that I do not mean to say that Facebook or WhatsApp or any other portal for that matter can actually hear conversation. They can't, as far as I know. However, our usage history, they track certain activities that we do on other websites also by means of cookies and other technological tools. They have a sense of what they can sell us the best, because at the end of the day, they run a marketing. Second, if you look at the politics examples, I'm not sure as to how much you're aware with the developments of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, as we call it nowadays, in the US presidential election. So I say it with a lot of responsibility, and I say it with an official document. If you read the testimony of Christopher Willey, who was one of the whistleblowers in that case, he said that Cambridge Analytica was actually they managed to create a psychological algorithm by which they could actually predict whether how many people in a specific region are going to vote for X party or Y party. And this happened because Dr. Krogan actually helped them harvest data from Facebook itself. So he created an app by which he could actually harvest the personal data of 87 million users of Facebook. And that was actually physical psychological algorithm was actually run through this data, and it actually helped them create a massive campaign for the Trump government as to how to dissuade a certain section of people to vote in America, or in the alternative to vote for Trump. And that actually, I'm not sure whether how much of impact it had, but say for an example, assume that it actually impacted the voting pattern in America. Just imagine that this has actually undermined democracy, because elections are one of the fundamental pillars of democracy. So the potential of harm or the potential of breach, the range of it is to say the least gigantic. It's huge. It can affect every personal daily lives. it can affect society as a whole, or even the nations at large, or the community of nations at large. It's huge. So we have to be really cautious about the usage of these platforms and their policies and other things.
So I agree that we have to be very cautious about it, but I think so it has become part and parcel of a lifestyle. Like today, even if I'm interning somewhere, or even if I have to share some details to my parents also, WhatsApp is the only medium, like it's the best medium. I won't say it's the only medium now, with Telegram coming into picture as well, and various other mediums coming into picture, but like major social medias being handled by Facebook, that is WhatsApp, Instagram, that today's generation actively uses. We do share a lot of data with them, and the consequences, like you pointed out, are heaps and bounds. So how do you think that current data protection laws can protect our rights from these social media intermediaries from assessing such details, as well as, violating our interest? What is the benchmark that these data protection laws help us as a consumer to ensure that our privacy is being maintained to a certain extent? Because completely it cannot be maintained, like you pointed out, as we are having a sense of this discussion.
I'm sure that, if you look at the demography or, the penetration of education in Indian masses, we are better off in that specific criteria as to, the fact that I will be a student of law throughout my entire life, and also you're currently studying in law school. Have you read WhatsApp's privacy policy in toto?
I have read it, but not in toto. Like I know the sense of it.
It runs in pages and pages, which you get consumed by.
Right.
So, the idea, I'll take this question as a two-pronged question. One is whether the current data privacy regime in India can actually safeguard your privacy right now or not. And second, if you look at the proposed data protection bill, how it can actually help users be more aware or restrict the usage of personal data by these corporations. So if we look at the current data privacy regime in India, we do not find much solace. For example, we just have, the IT Act, the two bare sections in the Information Technology Act, which talks about vertical application of privacy, which is that it do not apply to the governments to most extent. That's one. Second, we have in 2011, we had reasonable security and sensitive personal information rules, which actually lays down certain requirements. It talks about grievance officer. It talks about security measures. It talks about right to be forgotten, very, very, very brief details. It talks about other users' right also. However, all of these, it also talks about, of course, cross-border transfer of data, but these are very sketchy provisions that were way back in 2011. If we look at the technological advancements from 2011 to 2021 that we are right now, in the last decade, the usage of these platforms have increased manifold, and our dependence on these platforms have increased, leaps and bounds. But our law has not changed. So, law is always playing catch up to the technology. And there is no strict enforcement provision in the current data privacy regime, if we like to call that way, but we do not. But the fact is that we do not have any data privacy regime in India right now. We just have two bare sections, and then, of course, sensitive personal information rules, and a lot of talks about it, but nothing in concrete or substantial. So the one way to go about it is, and the Supreme Court also stated in their judgment, is that we need a robust data protection law or the data privacy law in India to be able to safeguard users' privacy, or to be able to capture informational privacy in a sense. Otherwise, it is extremely difficult. So I'll just give you an example. In European Union, there was a judgment in very recent time. I also put out a post in this regard on my LinkedIn account. The judgment is popularly known as Schrems II judgment. What happens was, Facebook Ireland used to transfer the user's personal information that it captured in Ireland to its organization in the USA. So the matter went to the European Union, the main court of the European Union, CJEU, and the court actually struck down, and the court actually said that you can't, transfer personal information of EU user to USA by means of the EU-US Privacy Shield. So there was a data sharing arrangement between the European Union and the United States of America, wherein the US entities could have registered themselves under the EU-US Privacy Shield, and seamless cross-border data transfer could have happened. However, the court rejected, the court actually struck down this specific agreement between European Union and the United States of America on the ground that the United States of America do not provide adequate safeguards to the personal data, equivalent safeguards to the personal data of users as they would get in European Union. And of course, a lot of surveillance laws of United States of America do not hold good in terms of general data protection regulation. So we have to talk about a lot of things, when we talk about the Indian landscape. We have to talk about consent requirements. We have to talk about privacy notices as to the privacy notices has to be really concise, clear. We have to talk about lawful processing of personal information. What are the lawful grounds of processing personal information? Second, what are the data users' right? You have to have a right to be forgotten. So when I actually said that information privacy is intrinsically linked to self-respect, dignity, and personhood of an individual, and you have to have ability to control or to see how your personal data is disseminated. It includes certain rights of the user. I should be in control that if I do not want my digital footprints to be on a specific portal or a server, I must be in a position to request that specific entity to facilitate that. I must have a right to updation of my data. I do not want my, all kinds of data to be out there, lay bare in the open. There has to be, and this has to be overlooked, or supervised by an enforcement authority, which we do not have right now. And the Personal Data Protection Bill, of course, proposes a statutory authority as well, which is the Data Protection Authority of India, and a lot of other things. They also proposes hefty penalties and other things. Apart from all of these safeguards, which have to be built in a particular legislation, strong data privacy legislation, user awareness and awareness about how we use certain platforms, why do we use it, it has to be embedded in the policy going forward. User awareness, user training, by the means of user, I mean every one of us, as to what are the reach of deviation from privacy by the use of these platforms. All of this has to be taken into account to make a better data privacy regime in India.
And I agree with the user awareness bit. I think so India lacks a lot of user awareness, and when we talk about even pointing out, we are so afraid to point out. It's just
I think the idea is convenience.
Right.
So we follow religion of convenience in India, for as far as I know.
Right.
So the idea is convenience, because why I was, very specific about user awareness is, for example, when we talk about online frauds, maximum number of online scams or frauds that you would actually see is that somebody is calling you and you have been gullible or naive enough to actually give them your OTP. Right. So you can build in, security in your portal. You can build in, firewall mechanism in your software. But as basic as this, that you should not give out your OTP to some random people calling you, has to be embedded in the user. Those are little specific things that cannot be changed. So that is where user awareness comes in. Of course, apart from that, procedure have to be streamlined. Like all corporations, for example, say Google, Facebook, any intermediary that you talk about, you should know who's the person that you can call, email, or message to exercise your right. And that mechanism, of course, Personal Data Protection Bill talks about. But what Personal Data Protection Bill will be, nobody knows, because as far as we know from the news articles and everything, that non-personal data elements are also being introduced in the Personal Data Protection Bill, and it is speculated that it will be laid down in this monsoon session of the Parliament, but those speculations have been there for all sessions of Parliament so far. So we do not know when actually that will happen. So yeah, let's just wait for that. But these are little safeguards that to keep in mind, to understand that these are, essential elements for us to be aware about our rights, and we should know as to how and in what manner our privacy is, compromised by these organizations or corporations.
Right, sir. I'm really looking forward to the case now, the WhatsApp claim, and now the Google has also filed a case. Let's see what are the developments. I would.
Quint and other news portals, they filed multiple cases before that as well.
Okay.
So news also talk about online curator of news or something like that. So a lot of news agencies have actually also went after these rules.
I think so. We all are looking forward to what law has for us, how the application will work on. So I would like to thank you for engaging with us and sharing with us your views regarding this topic. It was an insightful session, at least for a person like me who had a very little knowledge about data privacy law and data protection laws in general. I think so. You have given a great sense as to how I can develop upon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aditi. You've been great in terms of, discussions and everything. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me over.